This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Lit Show on Thursday, the 14th of September. Oh, the nights are drawing in, it's getting dark, it's getting cold, school's well underway, summer is way behind us now. On tonight's show, we have Aaron Patching, PE teacher, rugby coach, rugby player. Aaron's going to be talking all things rugby in schools, why it's important. And of course, that's all to fit in with the Rugby World Cup happening now. As we speak, France are playing Uruguay in Lille, beautiful city up in the northeast of France. I spent a year there teaching. Fabulous place next to the Belgian border. So without further ado, let's get to it.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges. That's where ADAPT come in. We're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern, apolitical alternative, offering expert legal, employment and mental health support. Protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? We're always apolitical and independent, specialised solely in supporting individual teachers. Our caseworkers are professionally qualified, ensuring you always get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. Whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, ADAPT are here for you. Join the thousands of educators who've chosen ADAPT to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. ADAPT, supporting school staff, protecting careers.
Hello and welcome to the show. Aaron, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Great. Tell me this, have you got the rugby on in the background there, have you?
Oh, I did think about it, but I thought actually I probably should give this my full attention because otherwise I will zone out, or you'll just get the odd scream every now and again.
I know, yeah. Well, I'm taking a sneaky peek through the double doors here, and
how are we looking?
Yeah, I'll have the odd glance here at the rugby. Yes, yeah. So, Aaron, you've something of a background in rugby yourself. You're a player, you're a coach, you're a PE teacher, and a big fan of rugby. So, What's your story, Aaron? How have you got to here?
Well, I mean, I've played rugby pretty much all my life with sort of the odd gap here and there and sort of done it through different countries. And it was just always my sport of choice. So from when primary school, we played touch. I was very lucky. I had a very good coach who come down to the local primary school. He runs some sessions and that's how I personally found out about my local club. And once I got in there, that was it. I was played there for the rest of my sort of primary school years, from year sort of 5 and 6, right through into contact, through secondary and into being an adult. So it was just a sport that was always kind of there. It just become sort of part of my routine. And being a quite sporty person, it led me into the actual career and job that I do. So yeah, I qualified as a PE teacher now about 7 years ago.
Great, yeah. Did I hear you say you played your rugby in different countries?
Yes, I have done a fair bit of travelling. So this is where the kind of on-off stuff has come from. So I never went straight to university. I actually took a job as an outdoor instructor for a little while over in Norfolk, which is why I left my boyhood club. And actually, in respect to this, I actually dug the tie out from my club. I'll big up Mitch and Balls down in South London. I was wearing the
Very
purple and
good.
green today, and yeah, I went travelling. I played a couple of games in Australia. We played
Oh,
the
wow.
Waratahs amateur team when I was living down in Newcastle, which is a real experience. Big Samoan boys there
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, that was an experience. I played in Malmo in Sweden.
Goodness.
I spent my Erasmus placement over there, yeah, and
Oh,
then when
yes, of
eventually come
course.
back, spent a bit of time in Twickenham in South London, and now over in Swindon. So yeah, it's sort of like I said, it's been a theme throughout my life, but it's definitely sort of allowed me to do that all over the place.
Wow, that's brilliant. Wow, true international. Yeah, great.
Oh, I
I
wouldn't
played,
quite say that.
yeah, oh, well, yeah. I played rugby in France, actually. Yeah, you might have heard me mention at the beginning. This
Mm.
match that's on live now between France and Uruguay is actually being played in Lille, up in the northeast of France. And I played for a little club up there called Saint-Amand-les-Eaux, tiny, tiny club. And it was my placement year. I was a language student, you see, and I was placed in a
Mm.
school. And they were delighted to have an Irish player on their team. So that all worked out really well. Wow,
Oh,
that's really interesting.
fantastic. A friend of mine used to play at semi-pro league down in Albi, way down sort of south of France. And the
Yeah,
culture there for rugby is just fantastic. It really is.
it really is, especially down in the south. Yes, yeah, where a lot of those games now are being played. Yes, they're fanatical about it.
Mm.
Yeah. So you're coaching a little bit of rugby in schools now. So what's that like, coaching in schools?
Yeah, no, correct. I teaching it throughout my career at different year groups, but in secondary, so from year sevens up to 11s, and I've been lucky to do that in sort of both schools that I've worked at. One down in South London, one over here in Swindon,
Yeah,
and it was really, I tell you what, it's really nice to see the differences actually in those areas
yeah.
between the two and how they're played in schools and sort of what their setups is for fixtures and so on. And like you said, the sort of cultures within those different places.
Yeah. Yeah. S- In Ireland, we would believe very much that it's the schools that kind of uphold the game of rugby. And there's a lot of chat about, schools being the nursery grounds for, all the players that go on to play both codes, league and union.
Mm.
Would that be fair to say, would that be your experience that it's the schools that really are the kind of the learning grounds for the players that go on to really make it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the well trodden route is through what you would say or you'd call your rugby schools. So
Yeah,
sort of your
yeah, we have
Whitgifts, your
them too.
privates, yeah. And so it's
Yeah.
very much seen as that's the trodden
hmm
route. And again, you'd see a lot of promising students. They would transfer schools so they could go to these places. So again, we used to have a couple, Whitgift, John Fisher, that they were seen as the ones to go to really sort of progress if you wanted that career, that academy route, to go to your premiership clubs and so on through the academies. But not only that, like I said, it is the state schools as well. They feed the local clubs and they are, I would say, the lifeblood of that grassroots rugby, having seen it sort of from both angles. Your level 10, 12 playing senior teams, a lot of them are school friends. They grew
Yeah,
up
of
together,
course.
and like I said, they dragged their mates down and so on. I mean, it's exactly the same for me and my best man who's at my wedding. We've been lifelong friends because of rugby where we met.
Yeah. 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 It's probably it's probably the same here in Ireland. And interestingly, there's a newspaper article. Oh, there was a newspaper article. It's a while ago now. I think it's 2018. It's by a guy called Tom Carey, and the title of the article is very interesting. It's how Leinster's schools are driving Irish rugby,
Hmm.
and can England learn anything from it? And I think that kind of highlights, just how much the school system that we have here in Ireland is very much the beating heart of rugby.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't seen that article, but I would absolutely agree with it. And I think we've had like I said, a bit of an argument here in England where we're getting characters coming through kind of the professional game, such as Carl Sinclair, Ludlam, and people who went to schools and then actually went through their clubs to get to those levels and stuff. And so, like I said, it was the mainly seen as those private schools that were the feeders for it. But like I said, I would absolutely say it's all in every school, because that's where they get the taste from it. We see it all the time at my school. We have a couple of kids. Like I said, we are a state school within a very sort of average area, I would say, of the UK, and we're able to put some of these kids that really show some promise through to the local clubs, and we've got some really good standard and good levels locally. But then we've got Bath, we have Gloucester, that we can start passing some of these kids with promise through to see if they want to do that and go on to academies, or if they're just happy to play for the fun of it, which I'm really happy to say in all of my experience of rugby has always been the case. It's not an elitist sport all the time. It really is about that camaraderie and that local grassrootness, if that's a word.
Yeah. Well, we've just made it a word, even if it's not.
Yeah, we'll call it that.
But I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And would it be the case that all the coaches in those, for want of a better term, because I agree it's the same here, we do have our kind of rugby schools, and we would actually have parents who would move house to make sure their child is in that catchment area and so on. But it is kind of broadening out into, as you say, the state schools and schools who might previously have been more involved in other sports. But I'm just wondering, would all the coaches be teachers as well, or would some of those schools have people who are just coaches and maybe not teachers?
So you get a lot of coaches. I would say that are parents in clubs, local clubs and stuff.
Right.
It's very much built on volunteers, and I would say you find, I would probably say near enough, most clubs will have a teacher of some kind in their senior team, because again, they live that lifestyle. They're all about the healthy lifestyles, and they sort of live that. I find pretty much every PE teacher I know, it plays their sport of some kind to some degree. But again, the coaches and what we'd call the mini games here, our minis. I don't know what you call it. What are they called in Ireland? Your youth sides.
Okay, well, you're not allowed to laugh now, but we call them leprechauns. Leprechaun rugby.
Oh, that's
suppose...
so much better than minis.
Yeah, but I suppose that's just a way of, getting all these tiny little kids involved and so on. So there's lots of Saturday mornings, and you can see them all kitted out, and they really go for it and so on. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's the way it becomes. Like I said, for some families, it's a family sport. I mean, again, there's teams. I think I'd seen quite a while ago, the RFU, they posted pictures. It was like 3 or 4 generations in one picture, where granddad's still trotting out on the Saturday with your senior teams, and you got right through to the young ones coming through. And it is like that. Like you said, dad played on the Saturday and he's taking the kids on the Sunday as well, it's just a real good family feel within the sport. And you get it at games as well. I mean, I could literally cannot speak highly enough of the culture within it, that it really is at its heart of a family community.
I was asking about coaching because there's a guy, I'm not sure if you know John Vanstone. He'd be an English player, very, very, very good player, has become a very, very successful coach. But one of the things he said about the setup in Ireland was that, in fact, this is a quotation. He says, the coaches are all full-time teachers. And here at Blackrock would be a big rugby college. Blackrock College, I think there's a lot to be said for seeing these players in the corridor all the time, teaching maths to the likes of Gary Ringrose, for example. You learn a lot about
Yeah.
a student's character as opposed to just
Mm.
coming in and offering your expertise as a professional coach. I think there's a big advantage to the system. And I'm just wondering about that, how much, being a teacher contributes to being a rugby coach.
Oh, massively.
Mm.
It's a debate you sort of have when you're doing your teacher training as such, because a lot of PE teachers did whatever sport course at uni, whether that be sort of physio or direct coaching course and something, and they go on to be teachers. They go through their initial training, and it is a distinction. There's the difference between a teacher and teaching and coaching, and then how do you
Mm.
blend the two, because it is about that. It's about making that distinction sometimes, that you are going to really go for some gamemanship here, and we're going to teach you the ins and outs and some of those black arts, whereas actually, like I said, you then go to we're going to teach you about the body and how your body position and your angle. Okay, this is why we tackle safe and how. And that's the reason behind it. And you can do that within one session. You can flip between the teacher and the coach, and when it's more appropriate to do that. And I think that's something that's done really, really well in a lot of state schools due to the facilities that they have, because they have to put that multi-hat on. And again, you see a lot of these rugby schools, particularly, they will draft in ex-players, they will draft in high-level coaches that are, like I said, they're out there to
Yeah.
give back to the game, and they're coming in with such expertise, and they are at such a young age. I mean, you just have to look at, like I said, some of the schoolboy rugby that's on display. It's fantastic. If you watch sort of the Daily Mail Cup and so on, you just see pure raw talent that's been really harnessed from a young age, and you can just see they've progressed through those different stages, whether that be with school, with county, or just good club rugby.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I think teachers have, very much innate and built-in skills that allow them to be kind of better kind of coaches. Yeah,
Mm.
hmm
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And it one lends itself to the other.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, yeah. How important is, what teachers know about psychology? And we do know a lot. Some might specialize more than others, but how important is that in being a coach?
Oh, massive! Like I said, how people take things in and when is huge. And like I said, if we look at any kind of cognitive theory of cognitive overload and the way we learn, I mean, even just the rules of three and feedback. If you're going to tell a player, get low, get here, hands there, punch through it, you give too much, they're not going to take it in. They can, especially if they're at sort of that very beginner stage and they're trying to learn a new skill. Again, we're looking at the progressions of skills and the different levels before you become autonomous. You really have to go back to that
Yeah,
first stage, and you just practice step by step by step, and you just give simple instruction. Stress and you're physically active, your brain is only capable of taking in so much.
yeah, hmm yeah. Because I think the modern game very much is an intellectual game, isn't it? I mean, that's obviously too strong a term, but it's a game of tactics and thinking, and much more than kind of the older game, which was a kind of you know less kind of brain focused game. Would that be fair
Yeah,
to say?
absolutely. And again, sort of, it's you're forever going on. How much do I tell these kids? Do we start talking about,
Mm,
when do you start talking about pods? When do we start talking about these plays? Why are we kicking and so on? Like you said, the tactics are so in depth. If you really
yeah,
want to break it down, like I said, depending on sort of what kind of level you're playing at and or school you're teaching at, and the ability of those kids in front of you. I mean, I've taken sessions, like I said, where we're just focusing on passing backwards. Let's move forwards. That's how we're going to get some territory. And then once you can get past that, you can build on the next thing. And like I said, before you start going into some really kind of complex moves, why are we going to pick here and drive? Why are we going to keep it in? Why are we going to come out to the backs and so forth? Like I said, the modern game's just moved on so much. I mean, it's not even been professional for that long. We're talking sort of a few decades. But like I said, it's just progressed and moved on. I mean, how many times do you talk about the game, especially at the World Cup at the moment? Everyone's going, oh, I don't like this kicking game. Yeah, they kick too much. Yeah. And like I said, if you can't see the idea behind it, it could be lost on you. Like I said, you're not seeing the tactics behind it.
Yeah, I do think that's a very satisfactory, dimension of the game, just watching the tactics. And I know, particularly I think, well, it is everybody, but I know they talk a lot about that kind of intellectual approach from a lot of Irish players, Sexton, O'Driscoll, O'Gara, those boys were, great skill, but very good thinkers of the game and, a few moves ahead. And, they talked about the players with them had to be very sharp and alert because these guys were really quick in their moves,
Well, be careful there. You're starting to give backs a good name there with how clever they are.
I try. Yeah.
But it is, you're right. Like I said, I love it when they call somebody a student of the game, someone who really sits down, they do their analysis afterwards, and they're someone who's going on to improve. And like I said, I make jest because I'm a back myself. But again, you just get some absolute scrum fiends who love it. They just love the idea behind the scrum, the foot placement, your body angle, where you're going, that second shove, and those tactics are. Because again, you can be creative. Like again, if you start talking about the creativity within it and the thinking behind it, of how are you going to beat this set of 5/8 men? You can do whatever you like as long as it goes straight and someone's up in the air. Where are you going to do it and how are you going to do it? And again, I mean, that's why the barbars do so well. We love to watch them. Everyone does across the world because they're the globetrotters of rugby, aren't they? So we just love it. You see it, they start huddling, you go, here it comes. There's a trick play.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so listen, it's time to take a listen to the news, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges. That's where ADAPT come in. We're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern, apolitical alternative, offering expert legal, employment and mental health support. Protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? We're always apolitical and independent, specialised solely in supporting individual teachers. Our caseworkers are professionally qualified, ensuring you always get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. Whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, ADAPT are here for you. Join the thousands of educators who've chosen ADAPT to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. ADAPT. Supporting school staff, protecting careers.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
RAC remains the top education story across many media outlets, with the BBC focusing on the impact the issue is having on universities across the UK. The news website refers to closures of lecture theatres, science labs and student unions. So far, 14 universities have told the BBC that they have closed or partially closed areas containing the reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete. Some lectures have had to be relocated, and a small number of universities have had to find alternative accommodation for students, as halls of residence have also been affected. This has placed additional pressures on universities already facing housing shortages, with charity Unipol suggesting that student housing shortages are going to get worse in some cities. Student numbers are growing, but the number of new rooms is tumbling. This is largely due to high building costs, older buildings falling into disrepair, and now RAC concerns are adding to the issue. Last week, the DfE published the list of 147 schools in England built using the concrete. 6 unions have now written to Education Secretary Gillian Keegan asking a series of urgent questions. The BBC says that Essex is the county in England with the most affected schools, with 25 closed, partly closed, or making alternative arrangements. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has dismissed suggestions that he was at fault for the concrete crisis. During Prime Minister's question time, he said his government had acted decisively, whilst opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer referred to him as Captain Hindsight. In Wales, only 2 schools have so far been affected by RAC, but First Minister Mark Drakeford said inspections were ongoing. In Scotland, Humza Yousaf has outlined his plans for the coming year, with a heavy focus on expanding childcare provision, saying it is the best way to support families. This plan includes the recruitment of 1,000 more childminders by 2026. Free childcare hours are being extended to 2-year-olds across the country. There will be a pilot of expanded care from 9 months to the end of primary in 6 local authority areas, and free school meals for P6 and P7 pupils moves forward. But those in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment will receive them first by 2024, with others following by 2026. Last week, Mr Yousaf also commented on the issue of banning single-use vapes, and linked this to the comments made about young people using vapes too often. He stated that the government will consult on curbing the sale of disposable single-use vapes, including consulting on an outright ban. According to The Guardian, South Korean teachers have staged walkouts over harassment by parents and students. Thousands of staff attended a rally in Seoul demanding better protection after a number of teacher suicides. Teachers are being increasingly vocal about their experiences of maltreatment, including being accused of child abuse after disciplining students. Around 15,000 teachers attended a rally last week, and some schools had to temporarily close due to a lack of staff. As of June 2023, 100 school teachers had died by suicide in the country since 2018. The current Education Ministry blamed the current situation on previous governments, saying that they had overemphasised students' human rights over teachers' rights. Finally, The Guardian also reports that a city in Japan is tackling a rise in truancy with the help of robots. 2 schools in Kumamoto have purchased mechanical assistants to help children regain confidence in dealing with teachers and their peers. It is hoped the robots will encourage children to attend classes remotely and eventually coax them back in person. The robots will be equipped with microphones, speakers and cameras. Students learning remotely will be connected to the robots via laptops, allowing them to attend and take part in discussions. The robots will not be confined to classrooms, but be free to roam so pupils can take part in other events and enjoy social times remotely too. Japan, like many countries, including the UK, is facing a rise in the number of pupils refusing to go to school since the pandemic. Could robots be the key to improvement? This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods. Your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week we've all returned to work and I'm going to discuss the old argument of digital or paper diary. For every argument for going digital, there's a counter argument for not, and vice versa. You can access a digital diary from anywhere on any device, but if you don't have a signal, it's useless. A paper diary can't get hacked, but it can be picked up and read if left lying around. You get the point. I personally like a digital diary as it suits the way I work. I can add links to online meetings, add notes and attach documents. I can see my day, week, month, year at the click of a button. And the most useful thing for me is I get reminder notifications. One thing to consider if moving digital this year is policies on phones in your school, as this is the most likely way you'll access it on the move. And probably most importantly, if you're using your phone, will you be able to resist the notifications from other apps or emails you see when you switch it on to use it? Cost doesn't really apply as a factor because you probably already have a phone capable of running a digital diary. But work-life balance may need to be considered as the diary is there 24/7. This can, however, be remedied by using Do Not Disturb settings for notifications. In the end, it's a personal choice. Are you paper or digital? Let us know at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech.
Teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges. That's where Adapt come in. We're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern, apolitical alternative, offering expert legal, employment and mental health support. Protection without the politics. So what makes Adapt different? We're always apolitical and independent, specialised solely in supporting individual teachers. Our caseworkers are professionally qualified, ensuring you always get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. Whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, Adapt are here for you. Join the thousands of educators who've chosen Adapt to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. Adapt. Supporting school staff. Protecting careers.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. You're listening to The Late Late Show on Thursday, the 14th of July. I'm Paul Hazzard, your host, and with me tonight is Aaron Patching, and we're talking all things rugby. Aaron, what is the value of rugby outside of the game and the enjoyment and so on? Does it have any value in the wider world?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you take the party line from sort of English rugby, the RFU do have their values, and they're spread across out in all their courses. So I mean, any teacher who does a training course, they'll start to get a feel for what those values. But again, it does sort of emanate out. There's just so much. It is a physical sport by its nature. It's physical, it's aggressive. And I think it's so important that that respect is held right at its core, that yes, you have 80 minutes of knocking lumps out of each other. But by the end of it, you can actually sit down together and you can have a chat. There is no animosity. It's a sport and a game at the end of the day. And I think that's always been at its core. And there's so much else that just spins off of it. So like I said, I've gone round the world playing rugby because these clubs are so welcoming to a literal stranger. I mean, someone who has jumped off the plane, they're there for a little while, I don't know anyone, but I saw a poster, like I said, I mean, I got dragged down Australia, I got dragged to a club by a friend. They literally were low on numbers and they said, just come along for a kickabout. I mean, I literally borrowed everything. I didn't have any kit. I didn't take boots across the world. But when I went to Sweden, I rocked up and did not know anyone. I saw a poster or a post on Facebook or something that there was a club nearby in Malmo. And I went down and I was welcomed and I met people and they were nice and they looked after me. And if that's sort of not values and cause, and it was unquestionable. It was just the thing. It wasn't, oh my God, this is odd. It was, I felt comfortable from my rugby experiences to do that. And I really don't know other sports where you can do it that well or that easily.
That's really interesting what you say. It's very similar to my experience going to France, because I was kind of sought out in the school and somebody came to me one break time and said, oh, you're Irish, oh, you play rugby, oh, come along to the club. And it's just like you've illustrated there were so many assumptions made, about the kind of person that I was. And there was just this kind of, there was no getting to know anybody. There was no initiate. You were just part of the club and that was it. You were suddenly a fully fledged member, very welcoming, very warm, very embracing kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the same in schools in that it's seen as a sport that you can be the big kid and you can still play. You can be the small kid and still play.
Yes.
And you can, It just has a role, a job, it has fun for everyone. And I think that's something I've always loved. I mean, I've always been the small guy on the pitch. I've been quick. Yeah. That's the only thing I've really had going for me. And like I
Yeah.
said, it was me. Like I said, no, I'm not picking the big balls and making crash ball, but I was there and I had my role to play, and I made a ton of friends in it. That's it. And at
Yeah.
school, especially secondary, you've moved up from primary school. Everything's different, and it's just that thing. It's that event that brings people together and starts to break
Yeah.
those barriers down.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yes, I was that kind of player too, you know. I mean, small, fast sprinter, able to just kind of move quickly. But, you know,
Mm.
I wasn't one of these big, you know, kind of blustering kind of players, you know, although, yes, you're absolutely right. You need them too. But we do value, in certainly in the game in Ireland, we value character and characteristics a lot, and what the game
Mm.
teaches, you know, respect, commitment, friendship,
Mm.
camaraderie, and all of those things. Yeah, very important.
Absolutely, and discipline. It's like the list just goes on. Like you said, I agree with absolutely everything you said, and it just gives everyone that chance to get involved and learn those skills, because it takes not just 15 of you. Like I said, if you're a squad and you've got a couple of teams or whatever, you belong to this bigger whole, and all of a
Yeah,
sudden those values just come through. And
yeah,
it is just part of the game, and it's just accepted, and it's just, as far as I've always known, it's always been there in any kind of guise. I mean, I think it's always the battle between old and young, and you had it easier here and there, and back in my day and everything else, but that filters through. It's
yeah,
it's that tradition you latch onto. I mean, schools have their songs, clubs have their songs, and that tradition, and it's everything as a whole. It just filters through into building that character and giving everyone a place.
yeah. And I think it was in our pre-show technical run. I think I was saying to you, you know, I was a careers teacher for a lot of my time as well, and I used to encourage, you know, boys and indeed girls. I have to say the girls' game in Ireland is growing
Mm.
immensely. It's very, very fast. But I used to encourage them to put it on CVs and to talk in interviews about their rugby, and
Mm.
you know, it clearly demonstrates the kind of person that you are. It says something more about you than you can maybe put into words.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, that I've always said that with UCAS applications. And they go, I just don't know what to put. I just
Yeah.
don't know. And you look at this young man who has, like you said, he's gone through the years, he's played every single day, he's been there at the trainings,
Mm.
he has
Yeah.
shown up, he got captain or vice captain at some point, and he's picking the boys up and he's organising the kit and he's doing all this. And they just can't see the wood for the trees sometimes, where, like you said, you've done it, you've demonstrated that,
Yeah.
and you've done it without realizing, because it just become easy. Like I said, it was something
Yes.
they enjoyed, and like you said, rightly so, they've demonstrated it without realizing it. And like I said,
Yeah.
definitely personally, I had that experience, and I see it all the time, particularly in schools. They just pick up on it. They're like, right, let's get together, boys, get in, get your team sheet signed. They're
Yeah.
chasing each other down at lunchtime, which I love seeing.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, right, come on,
Yeah.
get in.
Yeah. 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 What about safety in the game in schools? How does
Mm.
that kind of play out?
It's a big factor. It's a big factor. Um, it's something that worries a lot of what we would call non-specialist teachers, PE teacher, even actual, like I said, PE teachers can get worried
Yeah.
about it. I mean, we have a rule at school currently that, like I said, if there's no studs, there's no contact, and it's something that has grown on what kind of these red herrings and expectations are and stuff. That these rules have come in more and more and more, and to the point where some teachers will latch onto those. There's no boots, can't do contact. We got
Yeah.
two over. We got two over there, and again, and it comes from a lack of education, a lack of understanding, and it is, as you alluded to, it's a technical sport. It can be quite tactical and technical in that safety aspect of getting the tackle technique right, teaching those simple basics and getting it right. And it's always been there. But it's luckily the RFU in England have been trying to do a lot for a long time with getting teachers comfortable with that and doing their coaching courses, doing the Rugby Ready course, doing the head case course, so you can understand about concussion, what to do.
Of course.
And obviously recently with the tackle height, I mean, it was everywhere before the end of last season. And like I said, there was a huge amount of talk on it. And luckily, from my experience, schools have gone, okay, right, there's a change and we're going to get to know it. And like we've alluded to, schools are the lifeblood of it. You can't take it away. They're not there to make the next pros. They're not there to feed straight into the academies. They're there to give kids a taste. And if you start shying away from that, they're never going to get that taste. They're never going to have a chance to go, you know what, I really enjoy this, to have a value of that sport, of that excitement. And then to find out that actually there is a club where they can go to afterwards. And that's always been the big thing. It's hook 'em early to a club. And that's always been the lifeblood of especially the grassroots game. And if you start shying away from that because we're worried, we're going to see a massive decline in the sport, and it'd be a real shame, a real shame if that ever happened.
It would. It very definitely would. Yeah. But I think there have been big advances in terms of safety. And it's kind of come through several directions, as you say, there's safety in terms of gear and equipment. There's safety in terms of, changing some of the rules, if you like, about the game. And then that's a really, really important factor you mentioned there. I'd kind of forgotten about it, all these teachers doing their courses and their safety courses and learning about tackling, and particularly, as you say, for maybe PE teachers who want to have the sport in their school, but maybe not specialists. Yeah, it's very, very important. Yeah,
it's huge. And like I say, it comes down to that education, because you then become comfortable with it and that you're happy, and you start getting good at it, and you start seeing that the kids are enjoying it, and actually, you know what, I'm happy to now run some of these drills, put some contact into games. There is steps to it. I mean, like I said, if anyone is ever feeling insecure or a little bit nervous about it, there's so much resources out there, especially from the RFU, on their game changers stuff with their activation. They've got lesson plans out there for schools. They've got videos that explain the games and things. I mean, even literally, it was last year I was telling our head of department about just two touch. Again, just some rules that just mix that game up so much, that just make it more manageable, that they can then enjoy teaching it again without the worry.
That's really interesting, Aaron. I was just taking a note of that, and I'm going to put that in the show notes so that people listening afterwards can follow up on that. It's really, really important. Great point.
Yeah, no, please do. There's stuff out there. Teachers are so magpie-ish. We were all constantly on the lookout. And if you need anything rugby, just type in RFU game changers or go into RFU schools, and you'll find a load of materials there to help you.
Yeah. I don't know if you know or not, you're probably far too young to remember a rugby player called Willie John McBride. He's a Northern Irish player, big fella, fabulous player. In fact, I have a funny feeling he still holds the record for the number of appearances for the British Lions. I think it's 17 or something. Now he'd be a man into his 80s now, but a massive figure in Irish rugby. And in the third, he tells the story. In the third match he ever played for Ireland, and it was against France, actually, who are 27-12 against Uruguay right now. But he played the last half hour with a broken leg. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And, the guys came on with the sponge, the magic sponge and the water, and they're rubbing away at his leg and all the rest, took his boot on and everything. And they're saying, you're all right, And it's just, he tells the story really funnily. You didn't come off in those days unless you were dead. And he did. He was taken to hospital afterwards, and he was put in, plaster of Paris up to his knee. So it's a very
Yeah.
changed game from those days, and all the HIA, the head injury assessment stuff, is all very, very important. Um, and I see they're talking about bringing back the automatic 3-match ban or 3-week ban. It would be,
Yeah.
in the case of a head injury.
Yeah, it's always been. There's always the great story, isn't there? Like I said, we've broke my leg and I carried on, and so on and so forth, and so done this, and like I said, we just strapped it up and went on. And I'm sort of young enough in that I wasn't from the old school hard era. Like you said, we would break bones and carry on, and you would punch each other and then get on with it, and so we kind of had that. I mean, even like I said, it was kind of like studying was still a thing when I was a kid. Like it was just on its way out, and you could get away with a little tap dance. It was like I said, the game moves on. We understand how important the HIA is now, with, like I said, some of the stories that are coming out in the press where we've got ex-players, like I said, some really absolute legends of the game that are just going, I struggle day to day with keeping focus, and it's scary for some, especially if you're a lifelong player, and like I said, you're looking at how many hits you've taken. We see it in the NFL, we see it in football when we're talking about heading. Are we going to take out heading from school football? Are we going to keep the ball head height and so on? These conversations are always there, and at what point we start to take them seriously is when we start seeing those rules in. And again, we start seeing it within the World Cup. We're talking about it at the moment, the amount of cards that are coming out. And we talk about different consistency. And I'm not going to get bogged down in reffing, but it's all about player welfare. And at the school game, that's so important. And I think, like I said, they are really, really wary of it, particularly teachers now. And like I said, if there's head contact, it's straight off. Of course it is. So now it seems silly not to, because what's the point? Like I said, if it's there for enjoyment, if they're there to play the game, absolutely it should be there, and that competitiveness needs to sometimes sort of take a little step aside when we start talking about welfare at that kind of level, and for the enjoyment of the game. I mean, I've been concussed, I want to say 3 times, I say, because it's like I said, sometimes it gets, but sometimes you just really don't know. That's the other scary thing. You just don't know, especially in a kid. But I mean, I say that the 3 because the second time was on a double tackle. So this was a grudge match of Mitcham balls. I was 7. No, it must have been young. It must have been 15. And we've gone in for a double tackle. We can see this guy streaming down the wing, and I've gone high. My friend's come low, and next thing I know, this kid disappears from underneath me. I've missed him completely. I've caught something, and then before I know it, I'm on the floor. I'm out, and I wake up, and everything is dizzy. It's spinning. I'm dragged off, and as far as I know, I'm fine. Until I try and take that step, and then literally I've just gone bang, fallen over. And like I said, and it was fine, and it was right. Someone stood me up. Are you okay? I was like, yeah. And then that was it. I carried on and played. And like I said, back then you got away with it. It was fine to do that. You'd never get away with that now. Like I said, it's
no,
never.
No. And as you say, rightly so. The game has changed, and we've learned a lot. We know a lot more now, of course. Yeah. Having said that, and I know it's a very different game and so on, do you think, I'm going to get in trouble for asking this, do you think soccer could learn something from the kind of the tackles and the toughness of rugby players? And, you've kind of...
go.
Yeah. Well, you've got your Ronaldos, and he must have more Oscars than Meryl Streep. He really must have. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you breathe on him, and he's down, and he's rolling, and he's, but surely, that's wrong too.
Yeah, and again, I think we're talking. You get to that point of where you say it's tactics, isn't it? It's you're
Well,
going for the
that's
card.
true.
You're going for the
That's
thing.
true.
We know there's nothing wrong. Of course we do. I mean, literally. I mean, you watch the. I mean, any game at the weekend, there was blood. Every game at the weekend, I think. I'm just trying to see the Tom Curry eye blown. I'm pretty sure Etzebeth bleeding. It's everywhere. You look, you see these crashes and bangs because you're just shoving your head places you wouldn't put a barge pole. Of course you are. Like you said, it's going to happen. And then but football is a different sport in that it's technically a non-contact sport. I mean, I've played Sunday League and that's contact. I could tell you now that's contact. But there is levels of the game where, like you said, they do play hard and they do that contact. But again, I think yes, footballers try and do it a whole lot more. And if we ever saw it in the rugby game, I think we'd kick it straight out. I mean, people whinge and say that we're starting to see it now with the new head contact rules, and that they're trying to really bring it in a little bit, toughen it up, play. But I just don't think we'll ever see it in rugby. I really don't. Like I said, that football can learn from us. I don't think we would ever pinch that from football. Yeah. And I think everyone was on board with that one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think. Who was it? It was a game where they dragged him up. Who was it at the weekend? I'll have to come back to it. It'll come to me. He picked him up. Yeah. Was it the Japan-Chile game, I think?
I missed that game now. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it could well have been. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, go on. I've completely interrupted with my tangent.
No. Don't worry. You mentioned referees. Referees are very important in rugby, and they get an immense amount of respect. You don't get all that mouthing back and that cheek. And yet, referees do this there's kind of an ease to the referee, Do you notice that?
No, there is. And it's a confidence in that they can do it. Like you said, that they know there's going to be that respect there and they do it. Mm-hmm. And it's like I said, I mean, you can draw parallels to school with teachers going in, that there's a certain amount of respect already that you would expect that as the teacher and the student. It's exactly the same for a rugby ref. They go on that pitch knowing they are going to officiate the game. They're going to run the game as they see it, and that their word is final. And that you don't expect back chat. It has to come from the captain. Yeah, everyone knows that. Yeah, you always get told, and if you do, like I said, the captain's going to rip you one. You know it. And it's just standard. And like you said, that's a real thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sort of flips. And I think people always know it. And it's just expected that you do that.
Yeah. I always think it comes back to, that quality you mentioned earlier of discipline. Rugby players are much more disciplined. When the whistle goes, they stop. If you watch them, they all stop. All 30 of them on the pitch stop immediately, and they'll back off and they look to the referee, and there's much more communication and contact between rugby referees than there is between referees in other sports. Constantly talking to the players and,
Yeah, and I love, like I said, in the games they've got the mics, but the kids pick up on it, whether they're watching it or not, they see it, or whether it's through the coaches and thankfully the teachers that they tell them this or show them this. It's picked up. They do see it, and I see it at school all the time. Like I said, they know not to, and if they do, like I said, I personally do it. If our kids were to start gobbing off at a ref or something, you would tell them, no, bring them in. We're not. Don't do that here. Gosh, yeah. And we see it from all schools that you play against and clubs. Like you said, it comes from within. It's very self-policing. That's what I find as well, actually. If we're talking about, like I said, that discipline, it comes from everyone around you. It's that social acceptedness of it, and they uphold that. Mm-hmm. You just don't sort of see that level of it in football. I think you do see it, but like you said, it's not to the level that rugby has, and that gets extended to the ref. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, schools listening to us or thinking maybe about, getting involved in rugby or maybe extending and improving, the rugby setup they have, what could they do, Aaron? What could a school do to, improve their rugby setup?
I'd say the best thing to do, and I've done it at both schools have done, and I've spoken to lots of other schools, speak to and find your local Premiership club. They will have a community arm and they will offer coaching of some form. So we have had, my school in London, we had Harlequins come down. They run a 6-week program with our year 9s, and they run it again with 10s and 11s. We've done it again over here in Swindon. We had Bath come down. So again, they come all the way from Bath over to Swindon. And then they run these community days where they go and play tournaments with other schools and so on. It's great for the kids. They love it. It's somebody new. They're from the club. They're there in the kit. And the teacher gets to see so much CPD. It's unreal. You're just seeing how it comes from, like you said, those community coaches and so on. And you get so much from it yourself as a teacher, and you really see the kids respond. And then again, some of that starts to click. So I would say that's definitely one thing. I know everyone's not lucky enough to be in that catchment area or that close to a club, in which case, like you said, look online. The RFU has some great resources out there with lesson plans, with materials to go with it, and get yourself onto a course if you can. Like I said, you want that rugby ready. It's going to give you that minimums, the basics, and the head case course. Like I said, it's going to give you a real understanding of concussions and confidence in what to do if something goes wrong. And so I think that then starts to set you up to really build on that and on the teams.
Wow, 3 excellent strategies. Yeah, get yourself on a course, contact your local club, and look up the RFU. Super strategies.
Absolutely. And like I said, so your local clubs are going to love you. They're going to literally want you to send every kid you've got down to them.
They will, of course. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, mutually beneficial setup. Yeah, fantastic. And we're getting close to the end of the show, and it's traditional that I ask a question of all the guests. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, but the first one is the traditional question I ask everyone. If you had a magic wand and only one spell to cast, what change would you make to education that would significantly improve the lot of teachers?
Oh, wow. Now you're talking. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a question as well. I wasn't expecting that as well. I've been proper like sport and rugby brain now.
Oh, just throwing that one on you then.
And yeah, gone wide with education. I think every teacher just wants time, don't they?
Yeah.
We've got, our job is never done. My day's long enough. I don't want to make it longer. But I do want more time to do the things that I really want to do. So I would do that. I would wave my wand and I'd carve out, like I said, that everyone gets in Sweden, they called it fika.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the coffee break, no work, none of this. And it was, like I said, it was the chance to go with co-workers, and it was a national kind of cultural thing. So I'd wave that wand and I'd give teachers the hour lunch, middle of the day, that they can go and they can have that time to really sit down, relax, have that coffee. And then you've got 20 minutes to get that lesson ready and do whatever. But like I said, you've got that time for you. That's protected. Not add to the day, but carve it out.
Oh, I like the sound of that. I think a lot of people will like the sound of that. Yeah. And I said I'd ask you 2 questions. So with the Rugby World Cup on, and France have just beaten Uruguay. Yes. Who do you think's going to win?
Oh, you don't. I knew you was going. I knew that. That's the question I thought was coming. And do you know what? I would love it if France done it. I really think they've been on form. I got to admit, Ireland are absolutely up there. You can never count out the Kiwis. I mean, you've got South Africa that are just absolute units. They're reigning champs. They're there to defend. They're not going to give anybody an inch. But you know what? If they come out that pool strong. And I mean, they're going to. It would be something to see, a hometown win for them and a Southern Hemisphere team, because, like I say, it's either them or Ireland. Like I said, I want the homeboys. They're coming home into Europe, into the Southern Hemisphere, because England, we're not off to the greatest start.
No.
As much as I'd love to say it's England, I really, really would. But drop goals. aren't always going to get there, even though they did. But I'd like to say France. I mean, I think that would be a fairy tale for them.
Yeah. Well, home advantage does mean a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. I think you're right.
And they've been working for it.
Yes. Oh, they definitely have. Yes, they do have. Yeah. I, of course, would love to see Ireland win. And I'm not sure if you've seen it. Well, you probably haven't seen it. It's probably only in Ireland. The Guinness adverts say you can think it, but don't jinx it. So we're not allowed to say we're not allowed to say out loud Ireland are going to win. But I think it's certainly our best opportunity. Best opportunity we've had in a while. And
I mean, it's a hell of a run you boys are on. Like I said, you've got every chance in the world. You're in there, and like I said, it's just going to come down to that last sort of week of who's sort of made it through and is really hungry for it, really hungry for it. And I think that's going to be the real dogfight towards the end of just who's got that grit and kept the injuries at bay.
That's the
like I said, we want to. I'd love to turn around and say England are going to do it. We do it every year. We go, yeah, well, we didn't do great last time, but we come flying out the pools. And yes, we did. Don't get me wrong. We had the same, and I hope to God we do. Yeah. I really do. That, like I said, we come out fighting again. Yeah. But like I said, I mean, it was a different tactic that we're not used to at the weekend. Definitely drop goals only. But I mean, like I said, if it gets us as far as we can, I'm going to take it. But yeah, it'd be nice to get out the pools for us. But yeah, I think it could be, like I said, a very fun year to watch for anyone, especially non-rugby watchers. Please do start getting into it.
I think it is. I think it's very appealing, and I think it's a very wide open competition. And I think, yes, it's full of entertainment. Yeah, I think it's great. Aaron,
absolutely.
It's our time is up. Unfortunately, you've been a fabulous guest, and I wish you.
No, I've enjoyed every minute.
Great. All the best of luck. Okay, bye now.
Thank you so much, Paul. Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.